One visit into the dark, scary comment sections on social media, and you'll see that there's quite a bit of conflict and incivility running rampant there. So it would be naive for any manager or any team member to think that that's not slowly seeping into team and workplace culture. I've been talking about how the Society of Human Resource Management has said that conflict and incivility has been on the rise for the past 5 quarters. But I wanted to touch on something that I found fascinating, which is that they've identified the 5 contributors. What's causing the incivility to rise inside of the workplace? And I will tell you, it mirrors exactly what I've been seeing as a consultant that has spent 17 years working with organizations to help them build really high-performing and thriving workplace cultures. So let's break it down. It's not a surprise that we are in a moment in this country where there's been a disinvestment in the kinds of conversations and skill building, awareness raising, and training related to understanding diverse viewpoints. Diversity, equity, and inclusion for many organizations, not all, is a hot potato that nobody wants to touch. And in fact, it's those skills that are not being cultivated maybe in community or in home and not being cultivated at work, which I think is a through line to these 5 contributors. So without further ado, let me share what these 5 contributors are. First one that SHRM identified is political viewpoints. They say that the differences in political viewpoints is causing a surge in incivility in the workplace. Here's what I will tell you. Particularly in the last 2 months, we have seen a rise in the United States when it comes to both political violence, but what I would also flag as verbal violence, violent language, and in a way that it is, I will say, socially acceptable because it's being accepted in society at large to say hateful, unkind, things to people, to treat people in ways that are disrespectful and rude and belittling and demeaning. And it happens every day. And it also happens through the passing of legislation as well. So when you see that change of just rise of disrespect happening in our politics, again, we would be foolish to think that that's not showing up in the workplace. The second contributor that they identify is that there's a difference of opinion on social issues. So this isn't to say that the solution is to make us all think the same. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am bringing up as a point from SHRM, which I see in my world too, is that when we have so many competing headlines in our day, things related to, no matter where you fall on this, but marriage equality, or if we think that racism is bad, if we think that transphobia is good or bad, if we think that it's okay to speak to people in a way that is dehumanizing and disrespectful and belittling, just look at the news. We look at social media. We look at how those who we've elected to represent us and how they speak to one another or to their political opponents and how they talk about social issues. Their example that we see, I think, in the mainstream provides a blueprint for not everyone, but it does provide a blueprint for some people for what is or isn't acceptable. And so they may talk one way at home about the hot button social issues. And because that really has no accountability in private life, they can come and bring it into the workplace. And so without guardrails and conflict and culture norms about what is and isn't acceptable, the difference of opinion on social issues shows up in the workplace, and then it starts to create tension. We saw this in my firm after the murder of George Floyd. We saw this nearly 2 years ago when the attacks in Israel led to counter strikes and attacks in Gaza. We saw how that led to real clashes in the workplace, and people didn't feel equipped to talk about it or to handle it. The third one is just flat out that there's racial and ethnic difference. In my company, we have a tool called the Wheel of Identities. It's also called the Wheel of At-Risk or High Risk, or the Wheel of Marginalized and Advantaged Identities. And what this wheel does, there's 18 identities that we call in this circle. And this circle is available in a book that we created called Dismantle the Zones. I'll link it in the description. But it looks at these 18 different identities. So whether it be your mental health, your body size, your religion, your faith, your socioeconomic status, your age, your race, ethnicity, your skin tone, there's so many parts of us that make us unique. And then we bring all of those experiences into the workplace. And oftentimes the workplace has not created the environment, the norms, the relationship agreements that tell us what is and isn't acceptable about how we talk to each other and how we treat each other. I've said all the time, I am in misunderstandings often, but that doesn't mean that they lead to conflict. The misunderstanding essentially is an opportunity for me to get clear, to get to clarity. But with the right formula in place of fractured relationship, no trust, no team agreements, that difference just kind of sits on our team, and we just wait for incivility to happen. We wait for disrespect or conflict to happen. And then again, 7 out of 10 workers say that it goes unchecked or mismanaged, undermanaged, not managed by their supervisor. Here's the third contributor: concerns about U.S. immigration policy. So this one, it surprised me that showed up as one of the top 5 contributors. But as someone that is both from the Southeast, so there's a different way in which Southerners may talk about immigration than where I live now in Los Angeles, which is very near the Mexican border, where we have people from all countries coming through the border, right 2 hours or so south of me. I see on a regular basis the divide of misinformation and strong opinions related to immigration in the United States. And then that shows up in the workplace. And I'll tell you where it especially shows up. So we work with a number of clients who have staff from all over the world. I have a client, and I have joked with them for 7 years that they are the United Nations. They got some of everybody, right, on their teams throughout different divisions. And it's amazing because they're able to bring their lived experience both in the US and outside of the US to make their programs run better. But here's the thing: if you've got a team and you've got quite a few of those folks who are immigrant, they're going to have a different perspective than maybe folks who've never met someone who's an immigrant or who feels impacted positively or negatively by immigration. And so anyway, it's not a surprise, especially with the rise of ICE and immigration raids happening across the country. Again, whatever you believe, I think we can all see that there has been a spike in ICE and immigration and deportation conversations and how we have dehumanized immigrant folk. And that's just led to more of that incivility in the workplace, particularly what's socially acceptable of how we talk about people. And the 5th contributor to workplace incivility, according to SHRM, is age or generational difference. So this one is, I think, fascinating to me because I am in between 2 generations. And so often when I come in and work with teams, the way that folks will casually, and I don't think that they do it out of to be disparaging or to be mean, but the way that we are so prone to other shows up a lot about age. Things like, okay, this younger generation doesn't ... or, these older workers, they don't understand ... And then you start to add in the way that the workforce for many is rapidly transforming with, forget the digital age with like computers and internet, we're talking like AI and the way in which AI can do tasks that blow my mind, things that I thought only a human could do, AI can do now, and debates about if it should or not. Or, for example, across generations, there's different appetites for workload and for what is acceptable. So in my generation and the one before me, there's a predilection for overwork. For the younger generation, they're clocking out at 5 o'clock. They have lives to live. Work isn't life. Work just funds life. So there's different ways in which different generations communicate, right? We have seen with studies, a lot of the younger generations, they don't prefer to talk on the phone. There's almost a hesitation as well to talk on the phone. There's much more comfort to talk on Slack or other text-based methods. And for older generations, they prefer phone conversations or in-person meetings to have those conversations. So if you also have different style preferences that clash, that is another breeding ground for some tension and some conflict that can show up on your team. Those are the 5 contributors: political viewpoints, social issues, race and ethnicity, immigration beliefs, and also these generational issues. And they're not only a hot button issue in society, they are hot button activators in our workplace culture. And those issues don't magically disappear when people clock in to start their day. So one of the things that we invite our clients to do is to not ignore difference, to not ignore diversity, but to see it not just as a great thing to have in a workplace for innovation. It's important that we have a strategy for when we bring all that diversity together. How do we curate the conditions for that space to be brave? So I often talk about that we can't guarantee that spaces are safe, but what we, and I don't mean us, I mean in general, but what we as leaders can do is help facilitate what we will call a brave space, a space where people can boldly participate to the degree of their comfort. And when someone violates a culture agreement, there is the bravery to step in and to hold people accountable, not with blame or calling out, but with care and compassion. And so one thing that I'm thinking about too is, that it can often feel like managers aren't doing enough or that there is a burden. And people ask me all the time, what can we do? I always say the first place to go, conflict is going to be a thing that always shows up. It's how you manage it and how you recover after it that will dictate your team culture. But if you want to build a great company culture, we have a guide for that. It's called the Build a Great Company Culture Guide, and it's fueled by the 12 essential elements of great company culture. We actually did an analysis of the companies that have great culture and found out that they have these 12 elements in common. So if you want to figure out where you can start to build a great company culture, or even start to identify where is conflict getting in the way, I'm going to invite you to download that guide. The link is in the description. It's totally free. It's definitely more than worth a look. It's worth a look and for you to get your folks together and figure out where we're going to invest our time to build a great team culture. Now, I will say too, I have a blog article that I wrote on this because it's such a simple practice, but it's so critical. And it is to build community agreement. So if you want to, start to address these 5 contributors to workplace culture, or rather workplace conflict, here's one thing that you can do. Get yourself some team agreements. So when I talk about team agreements, one of them is, how do we want to talk to each other? What is our expectation for how we treat each other and our expectations for our words and actions? So what are our agreements to each other about how we will treat each other? Those are agreements or team agreements. There's also something that we help folks create called team conflict norms. This means that if there is miscommunication, disrespect, incivility, conflict, if it shows up, what do we do and how do we handle it? And so one of those conflict norms that I have seen our clients adopt, here's one: assume good intent, but address the impact. Another version of that is that impact matters over intention. In other words, it almost doesn't matter how you intended your words or your actions if the impact of those words and actions was negative. Another conflict norm might be, we're going to suspend judgment. We're going to get curious before we make assumptions about what someone meant or, why they're acting in a particular way. Another one might be to seek understanding and not seek debate. So think that over in terms of what some of your agreements could be. What I'll say is that so many of our clients and really companies worldwide, they have, codes of conduct or company values, but those values end up being words on a page. They don't actually end up being the behavior norms of how people expect unless there's reinforcements. I think the second strategy for how you can deal with these flare-ups is you've got to equip leaders to be able to identify what's the source of the conflict, what's the source of this tension that I'm seeing. And then once they can spot a light on it, then they've got to actually lead their folks through that conflict to get to the other side. And I'll tell you, because I've trained, thousands of folks in conflict methodology. Ours is the scale method for generative conflict. We train folks how to get better at handling these conversations, to get better at managing conflict. But I'll tell you, most managers were not trained to handle conflict, to map the source or the root of the conflict, which is why, again, 7 in 10 employees say that they feel like their manager could have done more and they didn't, right? It's when you say something, right? And it wasn't kindergartners, it was fifth graders, but still, it was grade school, this wonderful practice of communication. Is it true? Is what you have to say true? That's the T. The H in think. Is what you have to say helpful? The I is what you have to say inspiring, or is it going to cut somebody down? The N is what you have to say necessary, right? And then I'll ask myself, I really want to offer this, but is it necessary? Do I have to be the one to contribute it? Has somebody else contributed this thought, or might someone else, right? Then I might make space for somebody else to share. So this is another strategy for leaders, is really to think, right, before you speak, and to train our team members to also think before they speak. So again, if you want to build a great company culture, these two strategies are going to help you get better at conflict, and building a great culture is also fairly easy when you know where to start. So place to start, just any one of the 12 essential elements of great company culture. And we have that laid out for you in our Build a Great Company Culture Guide, which is linked in the description. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.